This recognition profoundly moves me. Stunned and slightly embarrassed also come to mind, because I have a secret to share with all of you. Most days I feel like I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I'm serious. Of course, I've accumulated skills, artistic and pedagogical. I've sharpened my instincts through experience in score study and score creation. But the deeper I go on all fronts, the only thing I consistently find is another, even deeper hole to fill with more mystery, more nuance, and more room for another perspective from which to see. Friends, it's taken me years of work to cultivate this feeling of not knowing what I'm doing. I know some folks get a little nervous when I talk like this. I know because I used to be one of those people. When I was a little bit younger than you, finishing my undergrad, I was so convinced that I had this whole music thing completely figured out. Mozart? Yeah, I get it. It goes to 5 in the middle. Beethoven? Yeah, the counterpoint's okay. Ask Haydn, he knows. Jazz and all the American popular music that I had loved my entire life, I left that all behind when I went to big fancy conservatory to become big fancy composer man. At 21, I was so certain that I was fully formed, that I was convinced that I just needed some big fancy teacher to see 10 measures of my music and they would anoint me the hot young thing in new music. I know. So I found my big fancy teacher when I was just a little bit younger than you in the form of William Bolcom. William Bolcom then spent the next year wildly unimpressed with me and my music. At the end of my first year with him, I finally, after never hearing any praise, asked him, well, what were you wishing to see in my music that you're not seeing? He answered immediately, that's easy, Joel, curiosity. Your music, just like you in your lessons, are completely closed. This shook me. It shook me because I was convinced that all I needed was someone famous to see what I was doing. And I had been desperately closing myself off from the things that would have made me interesting in the first place. Certainty is way, way, way overrated. So I spent the next few years following Bill's advice, embracing all the things I've been trying to ignore. Playing a country band where I'm singing and playing? Absolutely. Writing cabaret songs and shows? Sure. Falling deeply in love with the music of Jelly Roll Morton and Puccini? Absolutely. Falling down the hole of becoming obsessed with a young and up-and-coming composer, I wonder whatever happened to her, Jennifer Higdon. And finally, writing music for wind band. My God, are we allowed to write for band? You know, it turns out, looking back now, it's so evident and obvious why my music, after those years of embracing these off-the-beaten-path influences, started to attract attention. My music had stopped sounding like someone else's idea of what new music was supposed to be, and it started sounding like someone who was interested in exploring what can happen when all the musical bits and pieces of a life come together to make new music. Out with certainty, in with curiosity. I've always done my best to bring this spirit to you here. I always revisit my plans for lessons as I prepare to account for the new stuff that I've accumulated since the last time I've taught it. Teaching a 10-10-10 linear intervallic pattern. Hey, I was just playing Oscar Peterson's transcription of Two Sleepy People, and there's a beautiful 10-10-10 there. Boop, right into the lesson for the next time I teach it. So every time I walk into a class or a lesson, the only thing I know for certain is that there will be something new and something unexpected every time. Will it be a surprising question from a student that makes me realize I need to be more clear in my explanation? Boop. Remember for next time. Is it an insightful question from a student that makes me reconsider a passage of music that I've looked at 100 times? Boop. I'll remember it for next time. Or, as happened many times this past year, a realization of an orchestrational assignment that is so profoundly beautiful that it takes my breath away and gives me pause. These are the things that make this job so incredibly worthwhile. I get to sharpen and deepen my musical instincts and influences through you. And I'm so grateful that I get that opportunity each day here. So thank you. I'm positive that if it weren't for my time with Professor Bolcom, I would have continued down my path of certainty, constantly sure in my own correctness. I would have turned into a capable but boring composer, and probably a pretty terrible teacher, someone always looking simply to have the answer they're looking for regurgitated back at them. From my perspective, the whole point of this entire thing is developing a curiosity based on humility. I want to close with a fun story about Bolcom. Last fall, I had dinner with him, and he reminded me, as he often does, just how unimpressive he found me when we first met. He always has a really good laugh about it, and I frankly love it. But this last time, he summed it up with a succinctness that I had not heard before. He said, "You know, your chops were always very good, but there just wasn't anything remotely interesting about you or those pages you were bringing in." That's rough stuff. That's rough stuff. But I love it. It's an excellent reminder that the problem was not my technique. My technique was in order. It was my thinking and my worldview and my place in it that was holding me back, preventing me from doing interesting things in music. So, as the night went on, we talked about music and books, and then we talked about teaching. So I asked him about his teachers and asked which of his teachers gave him the most. Now, me being an idiot, assumed he would say Mio or Messiaen, as he'd studied with both. But no, he immediately said, "Well, Baltimore's own U.B. Blake, of course." I asked what made Mr. Blake's teaching special for him, and he said, "Mr. Blake was direct in his criticism and always curious to know why I was making unique musical decisions." I mean, that's it, right? That's the whole thing. Be direct, be curious. So, my friends, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to learn from you while you've been here. I want to thank my colleagues, any which of whom could be standing in my place right now and will be in the future. I'm constantly inspired by them and their dedication. But before you go, before I walk back to my chair, promise me one thing, that you will go out there and live your life and make your music like you be. Be direct, be curious. Thank you.